morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Friday, November 14th, 2025. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Happy Friday here. Here's a look at the ES in the daily time frame here, falling off here and pushing down through previous key levels, including the previous week's midpoint, previous week's close, and now approaching the previous week's low very, very shortly here. So big time key levels broken. This was a huge doji reversal with a massive stop run day in the previous session, especially a retest from that narrow range after the breakdown. This market here couldn't even retest the FOMC key level, turning down. This is a major failure right now developing and could really be the beginning of something that leads to a broader pullback for the first time in a while. Broader pullback meaning at the very least a push into this prior pivot low, but perhaps even beyond that. Are we headed down to 62.73, which is the 100% key range target from that meltdown Friday? Do we head down into 6200, which is the next key market structure level down below? And that's going to be below the 6600 level. So again, if we fail at 6600, you start to open up the next market structure level down, which is 6200. How far down do we go? So this is a big time failure developing right now, and again, how we finish the week will be very important with how price could play out heading into next week's price action. All right, looking at the NQ here, similar price action, more aggressive as this market has now reached the previous week's low. A big time failure again after a bit of a recovery to begin the week, with a bit of a bounce here, kind of a hold, and then a failure with a massive stop run day and a continuation now through the tail event here from the previous week. That also coming after that narrow range up here broke to the downside. We talked about how much energy was in those ranges. We're seeing that energy come out. We're seeing the ADR increase right now, and that could suggest increased volatility moving forward in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Again, this market couldn't even retest the FOMC key level above and is now headed back to the 917 FOMC key level below, which is 24,455. Again, if we're going to get a broader pullback here, how low do we go here? This key range low could be in play, and we could be looking at a bit of a broader pullback as deep as the 22.4s, 22.8 recent support right in that zone could be in play. So again, how far down do we go? Anytime you're failing through a 50 or 55 period PIMA here, it's a significant turning point at the very least. So this could be a defining moment here for this market if we cannot find a way to reverse today, or for the very least hold at these lows, because again, a further breakdown through these levels starts to really open up some downside. All right, taking a look here at, let's look at crude oil. Now again here with crude, we've talked about the recent compression here. That compression continued to play out. We did get a bit of a breakdown and a hold here, kind of a holding pattern after the breakdown, but we're still kind of in this downward sloping type of phase here. Very heavy pullbacks. So for the first time here, we're actually seeing deep pullbacks after selling. Deep pullbacks after selling. And before it was deep pullbacks after any buying. And that's a bit of a change. So we're still kind of in this downward sloping channel, still kind of playing back and forth. You can still see this market respecting here that October 29th FOMC key level. Do we get lower? As we mentioned before, if we get down into the 54s, 54 could be a pretty significant turning point at market structure support and in a window where we start to see seasonality turn to the upside for crude oil. So again, one more dump. Do we get that turnaround that can get us going into the beginning of next year? All right, looking at gold futures here, this one down big time right now, 3.25% at the moment, already a 200% of ADR day. That is a significant day one failure. You're seeing a stop run day already. On the inverted check mark day down, thrust reversal sell signal here to turn this thing lower. And again, this kind of pressure to the downside off of a lower high could at the very least lead to a retest of the prior pivot lows here. That's going to be right around that 3,900 level. So could be looking at a push into that at the very least. Do we get a drop into the next lowest FOMC key level below? That's going to be 37.22 right there. So right now, seeing quite a bit of downside price action here in this one, a bearish price discovery phase. When you get into these types of moments, you definitely don't want to jump in front of the freight train and try to buy this thing unless you see significant rejection first. Until then, you continue to ride the sell side to the downside. All right, looking at the YM, this one's down about 0.7%, right now. A big time higher high failure. I think that's what's most important about this market right here. It had the most juice to the upside, a big time rally, a huge get you long FOMO holding at the top and then getting the bag ripped from you here on a higher high failure, a big time rip through, back down through that FOMC key level, and a stop run day here and a 2-day continuation so far. That's big time. That's a big time rejection, a big time failure. And again, this market moves in 2,000 point increments here. So a failure at 47K could open up finally that move into 45K down below, including that Friday low of 45,380s. So how far do we go right here? This is a big time rejection. At the very least, we may have ourselves another new key range from this recent rally into this midpoint. That key range could be the next one to keep an eye on. All right, looking at Bitcoin here, this one's down about 3% here. When I initially left on my trip here and was away from the office, right there on that day, I said this does not look good this week for Bitcoin. I put a picture here that looked just like this with an arrow that went like that, and said that's what the week could look like again. This has by far surpassed expectations to the downside. Big time increase in volatility day after day here as this market basically is played out in a big time head and shoulder type of pattern. This was a big time retest, and we've seen a failure now through the 100K level, now trading 95s. I mentioned before, back here, when we hit 125, if we got back to 95 to 100K, this could offer the next 50% return to the upside to 125K and 150K over the next 1 to 2 quarters. But we had to see how market was going to test into that zone, because if it's going to test into it a certain way, you may want to hold off because a broader failure may occur. This is that moment here where a broader failure could occur instead. The fact that we are breaking through that 100K level with a transition style day of this magnitude opens up the potential to drop into the next market structure level below. That's 75K. 75K could be a very, very real target here for this market, and it doesn't have to take long to get there. So big time failure here. We're already 5K through that market structure level, so any pullback into 100K now could still be a selling opportunity as this market moves its way downward. Again, this large key range here that we marked, as soon as we hit that day, and we marked it on day 2 here of that bounce and said 80K could be the next level down by way of the key range. We have failed through the low. We've already pushed through the high probability buy zone, and in doing so opens up 92 and 80 down below. And any pullback, even as deep as that 103 level, could still be a selling opportunity until proven otherwise. Looking at Ethereum, this one's down 2.25% right now. Very similar market structure failure for this one as well. Key thing here for our traders in our trading room, we have updated our market structure levels here to be on the 750s, and this one just failed at the 3650 market structure level. That retest here is taking us back down to 2900, and a failure at 2900 opens up 2150 in terms of the next 2 major market structure levels down. Big time levels here. Big time failure here as well. We talked about it right there. Thrust reversal pro coming in hard right there. That's when we released it that week. That was the high. It was the high on the daily chart, the 60-minute chart, and it's been good juju ever since. Lower highs and selling pressure. We were right on top of it, mentioning that this is too expensive here and we could be looking at a massive pullback ahead. Again, I did mention between 3,000 and 3,100 could be a zone where there could be some great long-term returns, but this is not the zone right now. Instead, market structure failure could be ahead, with more pain ahead for this market. And again, this is a larger trading range that we've looked at. Again, there's nothing to say we can't go back to 1,400 or even into 1,000 below for Ethereum. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this plays out here heading into the weekend. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.